Welcome to Ask Me Anything, a title that has nothing but hubris dripping from it. I'm so glad you're here. Thanks for joining me, and together we will take off on this little rocket ship. I'm looking forward to speaking to you, and I just want to thank my friends for coming and hanging out. And I am thrilled to see, oh, Eliza, you cut bangs. Those bangs are cute. Hi, Hosanna. I'm thinking about Alan. I'm thinking about your dear brother. Yeah, sending love. It's awfully good to see you all here and to be joined in this moment in time for just a little glimpse into something lighter, something a little lifting. And that's what I'm hoping for. Adrian, I love seeing you. Adrian comes to us from Hungary, and I just thank you for joining us. It's so wonderful to see you. Elizabeth, I've been thinking about you a lot. You too, Christina and Fred. You guys have been all on my mind. Leslie, all of you have been on my mind lately. All right, here we are. So without further ado, my name is Desda Zuckerman, and I'm here with you. I'm present in the moment. And I'm looking very much forward to listening to those questions, because they always spark such great creativity. So what do we have, Cheryl? Have we got some in the chat already?
Yes, we already have some questions. The first one is from Elizabeth.
Oh,
and she says, you have mentioned that once the bio layer, the physical body, and the human electromagnetic field have disappeared or died, this all happens when we die, and they disappear from the human energy structure, the subtle energy of the soul. The human energy structure, which continues on to healing at the temple of healing, she called it the house, but it's the temple of healing, really doesn't care about things such as the burial procedures and other details of life. My question is, this is Elizabeth asking, what are the beings that present themselves as dead relatives or other discarnate beings known in this lifetime during near-death experiences and psychic readings? Whew, there's a question.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to break this guy down because there's a lot to it. Thank you, Elizabeth. She always comes up with some terrific questions. One of our practitioners who thinks a lot and has great experience in healing. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the biolayer and the HEMF die with the physical body. So let's just bottom line this. When your brain stops working and your heart stops beating, electrical signals slowly die out of your cells. You're no longer creating an electromagnetic field. So that's the energy that's right around your physical body, and it's, measurable, and scientists use it to things like things like EKGs and ECGs, and it's useful. But when we die, that dies too. So the electromagnetic field and the physical body die at the same time. What doesn't die is the sacred anatomy, which is the anatomy of consciousness. So that is the energetic that is out 20 feet on all sides. And believe me, that's an approximation. For some people, it's more like 12 feet or 10 feet. And for other people, it's more like 30 or 40 feet. Some people have enormous structures. So this is the sacred anatomy, a picture of the layers system. And it continues experiencing life, even though the little tiny physical body in the middle has gone. So my experience, I've had 2 near-death experiences, and my experience is that there wasn't much connection with what was left behind. And that could just be me, but you know, death, whether or not your body is laying out on a beach somewhere and has just died and is being swept out to sea, or if you're actually being embalmed or put in a box and buried somewhere. This is not something that really concerns the soul. It hasn't got a lot of reality for the being who's traversing the veil and going to the other side. So those are old terms. Those are old spiritualist terms, the veil, going to the other side. Basically, once we're physically dead, the structure, the remaining husk basically is returning to dust anyway. So it isn't like really of concern to the soul. So I think a lot of the prohibitions and suggestions that are made by religious organizations and governments and people who are trying to keep us organized as we move forward and not get sick and not become, polluted by dead bodies. They've made a lot of rules about how soon somebody should be buried and what to do. And there's a lot of sort of structure around death because it helps us cope, doesn't it? It helps us cope with loss. So the question she asked is, what are the beings that present themselves as dead relatives or discarnate beings to people who are in the process of dying? I believe that's what she was, because she said near-death experiences. So what those people are loved ones, sometimes guides, sometimes guardians, sometimes ancestors who have come to greet you. And they will show themselves in a form or format that is accessible and comfortable for the person who is in the process of dying. So a lot of times if you're with someone in the death room, they'll say things like mama, and they'll reach out, and they'll look like they're talking to someone, and my experience was in my 2 death experiences, there was no person who had ever lived in a physical body who was there to greet me. But when in my first death experience, when I went through to the other side, when I tried to go through to the other side, I saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of spirits, beings who were welcoming me, who were calling me in. And at the time of my first death experience, I was just 12. So I was a kid, and I saw all these people. I also saw a wonderful carousel, and I saw a lovely lake, and people were having picnics, and it looked just idyllic and wonderful and fun. Now, that's what I saw at that time. Now, what I would see, I'm not sure, but I think the fact of the matter is that we see who we need to see to be able to make the transition. So I think that's kind of where it is. And remember, they're in the realm of consciousness. So the thing that is needed is a sort of an up-leveling of understanding our consciousness, conscious awakened awareness. In psychic readings, that's something different. Sometimes people are reading the Akashic Records, which is what Edgar Cayce used to read and what I teach people to read in Awakening the 9 Levels of Sensing. But it does take years and years to get really, really good at doing Akashic Record readings. And during the course of that, if you're a clairvoyant, you may see other people's family, friends, people who've died, and you may see them as young people or old people. It just depends on what that person needs to hear, what that person needs to receive in that moment. So again, everything is really relative and related to the consciousness of the being who is in transition or receiving a reading. So if you're doing a real legit psychic reading, which is rare, believe me, there are people coming to help. Now, also, there are angels and unseen, magical beings, In England, Merlin comes to every reading in England, is there. In the United States, we get Davy Crockett, so it's different in every country. And people tend to call in the energies that they really can relate to. Holly likes Davy Crockett. So I think that's about as well as I can answer that question. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thanks for that. All right, now let's see. We have another question in the chat. Cheryl, I think that's from Eliza, right?
It is. She asks, when we have an energetically inappropriate relationship, is it correct to say that it is most often attracted by the frequency or resonance of one of our signatures? And if yes, do we have to remove the IER or inappropriate energetic relationship and then the associated signatures? Or could the IER be attracted by a life pattern or something deeper in that realm of compatible resonance?
Okay, so you added that last little bit. Yeah, she didn't ask that. So what I want to say is it's compatible resonance. It's not a signature. Compatible resonance is, I give the example usually of if I am learning to make cheese and I'm thinking about making cheese all the time and wondering if I should buy goats or cows, and going through a big mental process about making cheese and visiting cheese stores. Eventually I'm going to run into somebody else who's a cheese freak, and they're going to have a compatible resonance to me. And I might even get into a conversation with them about, different techniques of straining the milk and pulling out the curd and all this stuff. So you attract to yourself that which is compatible to you. And that can be for good and can be for not, So we attract to ourselves. So that's they call it the law of attraction. I don't like that language, but I do like the idea of compatible resonance attracts compatible resonance. So if we have an inappropriate energetic relationship, what that is somebody has decided they want to make us do something. So sometimes, the pushy mother-in-law is the great example. Somebody, mother-in-law I just want you to be happy, mommy or mother-in-law. And so sometimes she'll push into you. You've probably all had the experience of somebody pushing into you and feeling uncomfortable about that experience, feeling like there was something maybe invasive about that, or sort of attacking. And so you don't really enjoy that person's company. You kind of try to stay away from them. But when you go home, you're still thinking about them. You're still feeling them. You're still feeling that. And you may even start to feel sort of sick. That's an inappropriate energetic relationship. And what we want to do in that situation is contact a sacred anatomy energy medicine practitioner and have them remove that inappropriate energetic relationship out of your structure. So that is, it's very easy to do. You don't have to go through life feeling at the effect of your mother-in-law or anyone else. You can live perfectly well and in a happy way without that. I think it's important to realize that an inappropriate energetic relationship may have some relationship to a life pattern, but it also may have absolutely no relationship to a life pattern. So we have sometimes life patterns about being a doormat or being a victim or, being lesser than, or, sometimes being used by or manipulated by others. And there's this kind of pattern that we get into, right? And you may have experienced that. Hi, Ken. How you doing? It's good to see you. So if you're in that space, where you've established kind of a pattern of being a victim or being set upon, to find out that maybe that tendency wasn't actually yours, but was kind of something you picked up from someone else, it's kind of great to be able to just push that person out of your structure and not have to carry that anymore. So an inappropriate energetic relationship, which Elisa is pointing to, is that. Now, what's an IER attracted by? It's always compatible resonance, and it's and not a signature. A signature is, for example, if I take aspirin, I have an aspirin signature in my structure. So we can attune those medications or not, and we can remove them if we're done. If we don't no longer need to take aspirin, we can take it out. So signatures can be related to drugs, but they can also be related to events in your life, like a bad accident or a surgery or something. So if you have the energy of that experience removed, you don't have to then develop it into a pattern. You don't have to then start using it and reusing it and using it again. So, okay, let's go to Tamara.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, this is a client question.
Okay.
She's asking, what is the relationship between percentage of effectiveness and the pulses?
Okay, so this is kind of a nootsy, technical, sacred anatomy, energy medicine practice question. So in sacred anatomy, energy medicine, we use a dowsing rod to sense someone's pulse. All right, so can I sense your pulse, Tamara? Okay, so I'm going to make a thought form of Tamara. I'm going to connect her to the thought form. I'm going to bring in universal love and light. Tell me when you feel it, Tamara. So she's now feeling the energy. And I've got a little hologram of her on my desk because I see clairvoyantly. I can look at it and feel into her. So I'm taking her pulse. So this is her pulse. It's slow, but it's very steady, and it's open. So it gives me an analysis and understanding of 3 of the 4 aspects. We have 4 aspects. We have psychological, emotional, spiritual, and physical aspects. And this is giving me an understanding that her emotional aspect, her psychological aspect, and her spiritual aspect are pretty open and, open to her own world, her own life. If I look at her physical aspect, I do that pulse separately, and it's mirroring, it's just a little faster. So one side is maybe a little slow, one side's a little fast. So she's now operating, her 4 aspects are operating at 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 86%. So each of those things analyze and assess your 4 aspect performance. Why do I care about that? I care about that because everything in our experience of living is directed by soul's purpose. And the 4 aspects focus and move that soul's purpose forward. So they are kind of the authors of our soul's experience. A lot of places they call it the higher self, which I don't like because I don't like higher and lower. So this is the 4 aspects of the authentic self that we're able to look at and experience and understand. And when we do that with the percentage, we get sort of the general overall look at what's happening. When we look at it with the pulse, we get an experience of how well those 4 different aspects are functioning in a more detailed way. So that's the reason we do that. It has to do with assessment. Tamara, where did you go? There you are. Okay, so Tamara, you're a little bit low. Let's bring in some nice energy for you. Is that okay?
Oh, thank you. Yes.
Okay, I'm going to bring in an energy called sanctuary, which feels like you would like that. So I know these energies well, so I'm just feeling one. So I'm bringing sanctuary in for Tamara. It's a lovely lavender energy, and she's perking right up. That's good. And then I'm going to bring in Vim and Vigor. And Vim and Vigor is self-explanatory. We know what Vim and Vigor feels like when we have it, right? All right, so I'm just bringing those in. And Tamara, I'm going to ask you to integrate and blend yourself, and I'm going to go back to the class. Okay, thank you, sweetheart. I'm going to dismiss your thought form now, but you go ahead and harmonize and integrate and blend. Okay, Christina. Hi.
Desda. Hi, everybody. I would like to ask you a few more questions from the conversation that I started in the chat, which is about IERs and merging, kind of similar to what Eliza was talking about. Lisa, sorry. So I have a string of questions. I have 4. I'm wondering if I could just ask them one at a time instead of just like bombarding you with a bunch of questions.
No, please ask them one at a time. It's a lot easier for me to focus.
Right.
Thanks.
Okay, so my first question is, you talked about HEFs overlapping. So I just want to be clear, when they overlap, are they actually mixing together, or is it more of an HEMF influence on another?
Well, both things can happen, and I didn't say overlap, I said overlay.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, overlay.
Yeah. So when one structure overlays another structure, it can dominate the structure it's overlaying. And this happens a lot in life. Somebody comes along and they give you a great impression, and you like them very much, and they're overlaying your energy, and then they leave, but something may be left behind. And what might be left behind sometimes is it can be illness, it can be symptoms of something, it can be particular neuroses or stresses or traumas or even karma. And some of that stuff can actually, if the overlay is strong enough and it's there long enough, it can leave kind of a mess behind. And that's the experience of, sometimes you get like traveling with people who are not like intimate, people like just friends you're going to go on a trip with, and you kind of leave the trip and think, I need a vacation from my vacation. That was so stressful. Those people were so difficult. I don't think I can ever do that again. And you know how that feels, right? Everybody knows how that feels. So that's a kind of an overlay. And it's a little bit of an invasive energetic thing. Now, if you know how to use the edge technique, which is a technique I use to teach people appropriate boundaries using their sacred anatomy, if you know how to do that and you understand, how to protect yourself in life from electromagnetic disturbances, which is what electromagnetic disturbances is, what the overlay and IER are. If you know how to use the thing called the golden rain, then you are more easily able to shake off those overlays from people, because it happens a lot. It happens all the time. You know how it is, how you're feeling really good and you go home to see your mother. You don't feel so good. You come away going, what? Where did I go? What happened to me? I was like 6 again. I have no idea what happened. And so if that happens to you, you definitely need to take the edge class from one of our wonderful teachers. And you need to get a session and learn how to handle electromagnetic invasive energetic. So the electromagnetic disturbances happen all the time. They happen because of our cell phones and our computers and cell transmissions and, giant televisions. 82-inch television. We have the biggest television screens ever. And so we're getting constantly bombarded by electromagnetic disturbances. And, people do things like invent necklaces you can wear and sell very expensive equipment you can plug into circuitry, you spend $12,000 and all of a sudden your whole house is electromagnetically protected. My experience of all of those gadgets is that none of them work. So what works is consciousness, because energy is consciousness. So go ahead and ask me your next question.
Awesome. Thank you. So my next question is I've done this other modality that also works with the HEMF, and sometimes when I'm working in people's gestation period, I can literally feel their parents in their structure. So I know we talk about an IER as an inappropriate energetic relationship, but I'm just thinking about like children who are like being born and then growing up. I'm assuming that overlay, those kids are like absorbing to some degree their parents' energy, and it affects them, right? I mean, they're too young to be like, oh, I have an inappropriate energetic relationship. But I guess my question is like,
They might be so young until they're 60.
Yeah, I mean, is that a thing? And like, if that's a thing, like, let's just say you're absorbing your parents,
not
like,
a
how
thing.
does that affect you in the long term?
It's not a thing, honey. And the reason it's not a thing is because it's the baby that's doing the overlay.
The baby's doing that.
The baby's doing the overlay, not the mom or the dad. It's the baby, and the baby is attached to the edge of the mom's structure. Okay. And the baby's electromagnetic field is inside of the mother. So the baby has two locations where it is managing its own gestation.
Okay.
So at the edge and inside the mother. And it's the baby who's doing the overlaying. Anybody who's been pregnant, it's like your life is not yours anymore.
Okay, so this leads me to my last question.
Okay.
And I've been doing this letting go technique, or I guess the Sedona method, where you just kind of sit in your emotions to dissipate them and not necessarily think about them. And sometimes when I'm doing that, I notice that I feel the energy of a specific person. Like I'll be working through something and then I'm like, oh, Josh Jones is here in my structure. It feels like, And I'm assuming, I mean, I know that was probably an inappropriate energetic relationship, but my question is this my interpretation of his energy, or is that actually his energy in my structure? And if it was his energy in my structure, is there a process of like releasing this stuff in life? Like, I don't want people in my structure.
Well, if somebody's actually in your structure, that's an IER and you can remove it,
Okay.
But if someone just comes to mind,
right. Mm-hmm.
That's your consciousness, and probably a big part of probably your ego, and the egoic nature is electromagnetic. So there's buzz, there's excitement. And if it's somebody like when you're first falling in love and you just can't stop thinking about that other person, that doesn't mean that they're in your structure. It means they're in your life, And so there's a different quality to that. And it isn't invasive.
Okay.
And it's you that's called them. It's you that's called them to you,
Okay.
So you can also send them away.
Okay. So it's like this person was like 20 years ago. So basically what I'm assuming is this is my interpretation of his energy that I kind of kept, and like an emotion, I'm just releasing it when it comes time to release it. I'm not calling him back. I don't want him back.
I hear you. So a lot of times, like there's a thing called the ex-lover syndrome. I'm not saying this guy was a lover, but if that's the case, there is a specific procedure to let them go. It's important to realize that. So there's two levels of this. One is you've had sex with the person, and the other is you haven't. Okay. So if you've had sex with the person, you have captured some of their energy. And it's, there's a quality of capturing. So you really need to let them go. There's a thing called the deprivation purge, which we learn in level 3. That's important. And it's a way to release people like from the heart chakra or the dantian, to release this person. So sometimes people get like kind of caught up in you, and there's a need to let them go. There's a need to tell them that that's it, that it's over. Thank you. Go on, live your life. A way you can do this, and it's really effective, and it's been used for centuries, is the Ho'oponopono, which is the Kahuna meditation for just literally blessing someone, seeing them as whole and seeing them in a happy life, and that's it. You don't need to do anything with them. Because this realm that we're talking about is the realm of consciousness, we don't need to be worried if we're getting dirty or encroached upon. I think there's a tendency, especially once you learn how to clear yourself and remove signatures and do all these things, there's kind of a tendency to be like, oh, I don't want you to get on me, and kind of a little bit of that. I'm not saying that's what's happening with you, but a little bit of that can creep in. So just because you've learned to clear yourself, or you've learned that there are signatures, or you've learned that people do overlays, or you've learned something about an IER or even possessions, you've learned about all these sort of subtle, psychic, spiritual, metaphysical things, it doesn't mean that life in its ordinary state stops. So sometimes we get obsessed about somebody. I've listened to some teachings from some other people, and they say things like, oh, if you're really thinking about somebody a lot, they're in your structure. No, they're not. Why would you think that? They're just in your mind. And you have to decide whether you're going to be driven from your small mind or you're going to be driven from your larger mind. So one of the things you can do is to go into your greater mind and release them. Just release them. Did I answer your question, Christina? Or do you have another one?
No, I think you did. I will contemplate this a bit more. Thank you.
Come back around. Hi, Chanson, sweetheart. How are you? So pretty in your yellow. I love that color on you.
Thank you. Thank you. I am curious about a couple of the karmic wounds that I've been removing have been really old, like 30, 40,000 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to understand, even though we try to identify the specific date and the time and so forth, and I know that time is not necessarily defined in that way, 40,000 years ago. So are we identifying a system to relate to a reference point for the specific frequency that we're working with? I would like for you to comment a little bit about, when the date and the time is not really accurate, but how that works energetically.
Well, first of all, you don't know it's not accurate.
Oh.
You don't. Life and human life has existed on this planet longer than people have determined. And almost every year now, we're having discoveries that say, oh, we're older than that. Now instead of 7,000, it's like 14,000, That's just the start. There's more. So
I'm referring to the solar calendar. That's what my reference is. Not that it's not valid. I do believe it happened 40,000 ago, but it's just the solar calendar wasn't in existence. So
we have a reference point. It's the solar calendar. So when we do now, I just want to speak just for a second to people who are not practitioners, because there's a couple of you. They're mostly practitioners on this call today. So Fred and Ritza and Ken a couple of others are not practitioners. So you're getting to hear sort of the behind the scenes questions that occur for practitioners. So forgive us if we're getting too nerdy and, anatomical for you. So in a procedure where we're going down a timeline and we're looking to find the beginning of a karmic wound. This is what Chensen's referring to, is like the time. So we get a date and we get a time. Now, is that an actual point of fact, legitimate time when this thing happened? It may not, because as Chensen points out, the solar calendar wasn't, it was a lunar calendar most likely that was in use. So, but we're using the solar calendar because it's what we understand, it's what we know, it's what we can translate the information from. So it's essentially a frequency hook, and it's something we can drive to the initial event. I've done plenty of karmic wounds that are 25,000, 35,000, even 60,000 and 100,000 years ago. And who knows what we were doing then? We don't really know. And some people can say, oh, well, that's Lemuria, or that's Atlantis, or that's, something else that fell into the water. But the truth of the matter is, it just gives us a hook. And so we move to the hook, we grab onto it, and then we want to bring back into the present moment who the karma is with. So the people in your current life that the karma is with may have had a relationship with you in a past life that's defined this sort of context of the life experience in today's world. So we use the hook of time, we use the hook of date, we use the hook of emotions, we see how many people you were in a karmic relationship with, and that's part of how we define a complex karmic wound. There's a simple karmic wound and there's a complex karmic wound, and Chensen's discussing a more complex one. So when we use these things as hooks, it's almost like we have enough hooks now. If the more detail you can get, how many people were there at this karmic wound event? What were their feelings? What were their emotions? Those are the emotions in the space of the karmic wound. They're the time and the date of the space of the karmic wound. And then we start to do things like, who were you and what were your relationships with these other beings in that karmic wound? Not who are they right now, but who were they then? And so we draw a kind of scenario. Now, the whole reason you do the scenario is so you can understand the context of the wound. And once you get that, once you tell the story, it starts to make sense to most people. There are people that, while you're describing this, will immediately start to see it. There are people that will feel it. There are people that will say, oh, that's why my back hurts, or something else. So there's lots and lots of little tweaks that happen in people's subconscious mind and conscious mind. And when we become aware that there were 6 people in the room when this karmic wound happened, that we were, 11 years old when it happened, that we were a little boy and not a little girl like we are in this lifetime, there's different energies that are evoked. So you get the sex and the age and the relationships, and you get the, kind of the number of people and the space. And sometimes you even get the country where this happened, or the continent where this happened, the location. And I can't tell you how many times in my many, many years of working with karmic wounds, which I started working with them in the late 70s. So I've been working with them a long time, like thousands of karmic wounds. What I am aware of as I start to draw the scenario is I'm aware of who that person is in this life. And I start to really see sort of the impact of the karmic wound. And that's just after years of doing it. I can really feel that. But you can also, if you get more of these hooks, you can start to feel into it, and they can feel into it. They have an experience of what their karmic wound is. And karma just means action. So it's like the actions that they took at that time. And sometimes a scenario will just unfold. I've had the experience of doing a karmic wound and actually seeing people's faces and, feeling the impact of a blow or, chains on my wrists or something. I've had these experiences of feeling it for other people having their own wound come to life in their own way, so each person has a unique take on it. So that's.
Yes, thank you. What I find interesting is that for these complex karmic wounds, it appears that the hooks are so critical to name and understand, as opposed to when we do a life pattern, we try to achieve percentage of understanding of 100% and so forth. But this is more of a puzzle of identifying the hooks, the accuracy of the hooks, and then to step back to see the impact. So it's a little bit of a different approach.
A lot of people say these days that it's extremely popular now to say you are your story. Your story is so important to understand and tell others about. And I actually say the exact opposite. You're not your story. Because I've seen so many stories. I've seen so many stories that just vanish in a poof, And they're really the only value they have is giving you some sort of sense of container for this moment in time, which is what we're capturing when we go to, April 16th, 1822 at 6:45 in the morning in Belgium. We get this real exact thing. Over and over again through the years, I've also seen historical beings, and been able to, pinpoint the date of a battle or the date of something critically important historically, and like lots of people have been to the French Revolution, seem to have seen the French Revolution. Less so for World War II. We're getting less information about World War II and Vietnam War and Afghanistan because those people are still recovering. Those people have not incarnated back in again, mostly. Occasionally you find somebody. The concentration camps have brought a lot of people right back, but it's important to realize that you're usually traveling back in time. Did you have another question?
It's all from this planet, right? So, for example, when you mentioned that you identified a karmic wound back to 100,000 years ago, so this would be Earth-based experiences, correct?
Okay, I'm going to hedge my bet here a little bit because there are some people that are so dedicated to the belief that they have some kind of alien connection that I don't want to offend their sensibilities. So I'm not going to say absolutely not. We are Earth people. But here's the truth. You're from this planet, okay? We're here. We are Earth people. Your ancestors were Earth people. The chances that your karma is Earth-based, really high. And every now and then we have these memories of being on other planets or feelings of being from somewhere else or having been somewhere else. And my advice to people who are having those experiences is you may not have to go to another planet to have that experience. There's a lot that happens on the old planet Earth.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Yes, Desda.
Okay.
So for our time right before we come back to the planet, it's the Council of 12 that help us choose our parents and the lessons for evolving our souls in our upcoming incarnation. So regarding this Council of 12, do they follow us lifetime to lifetime? And what is their nature? Are they deities, guides, guardians? Can you explain how that happens?
Well, first of all, there's not always 12. So it's like a council of elders, you know. And what they are is beings who are essentially bodhisattvas. So they're dedicated to the evolution of the human species. And what they do is they sit with you before you come into this life, and they ask you basically, what's your intention? What is it you want to accomplish? And they don't help you do anything. They just ask you questions. So you're on your own with the choice of your parents. and you sink or swim with that choice, baby. That's the way it goes. But they guide you in that they ask questions that open your eyes. So if you say, I want to learn how to love, for example, maybe that's what I state to the Council of Elders. They might say, in what way? And then you have an opportunity to expand on that. And then there are essentially seeds that are placed into your structure that can activate, usually at trauma or difficulty or great decisions or moments, critical moments. And these seeds will kind of pop open, and they create some of the lessons that we learn in our chakras and our layers and some of the other systems. But it's primarily, really, to be honest, it's primarily a kind of guidance system and a container. And if you are unclear about why you want to return to the planet, excuse me, they don't approve you to go through. Now, there's ways people get around that. Some people die and come right back in. There's this kind of, ping pong effect that's been happening. We've been seeing quite a bit of that. So that happens because of a problem that's existing in, behind the veil on the other side. So on the other side, there's this thing called the cloud of unknowing. And it was first written about by Teresa of Avila, who felt it. And if you encounter it, you can't get to the other side. So you come right back into a physical body. And sometimes people who do that are very uninformed about their own nature. They haven't had an opportunity to study in the Temple of Wisdom or to go to the Temple of Healing to recover from this lifetime. So that's the value of a spiritual practice. These generally are people who don't have spiritual practices. If you have a spiritual practice, your practice will lead you. There you got St. Teresa of Avila there, Hosanna. Thank you. She was pretty amazing. There's been lots of wonderful, thank you, sweetie. That's a beautiful picture. There have been so many wonderful people who have lived and died on this earthly plane, and so much knowledge. We have to sometimes look way back to find sort of crystals of truth that haven't been polluted by structures of manipulation. So Teresa of Avila's insights and visions have that quality of purity. So do Hildegard von Bingem's visions. Pretty amazing teacher. And there's so many more. Some of the great Siddhus and teachers from India have brought forth amazing visions and truths. And then there's people like Edgar Cayce, who have brought through wonderful visions. So what would somebody like that say to the Council of Elders? They might say, I just want to be of service wherever I'm needed. Wherever I'm needed, I want to be of service. And that's a really, kind of open-ended, high-minded idea. And then they have to create a mission for themselves. They have to create their focus. So the focus is the thing, and that's where the elders ask questions to help you decide and get clear on your focus. And sometimes you're not clear at all. and they approve you to go in so you can, thrash around. So sometimes people come right back in because they are so unclear and they've managed to avoid this sort of hierarchy that's set up. We have this great system that's been set up, but there's this darkness that's there and you have to get through it. That's why you need spiritual clarity and a spiritual practice. That's why you need to have unseen guides, guardians, and helpers. Those are the reasons why people for centuries have been teaching this. Centuries and centuries and centuries and thousands of years. Really, it's not new. Yeah.
Thank you, Desda.
Thank you, dear. Okay, Ken's got his hand up. Hi there, Ken. It's nice to see you. I remember meeting you years ago.
Yes, it's been a while. Nice to, I was just curious. I've missed your work, and I recently retired from my teaching work, so I have more time than usual, which feels incredible. I'm not sure how to really rethink this latest chapter of life, but I really did appreciate your work in the past. And my passion, I'm not sure if you remember my work, and it's not important that you do, but I taught holistic health studies for 33 years at a university.
I remember.
Okay. And my passion has been cultural healing. And so we're clearly in a time of, and I've worked as a congressman, I've worked for a congressman in DC, and I've really met and seen some of the dark forces in the deep state that are amazingly there. Presidents come and go, but right, it's still there. So I'm really curious about this particular state and time that we're clearly in a major transition, whether you see it astrologically or whatever, the Trump paradox, all of that, you hate him or love him. And it's I've been a progressive most of my life. I can't even talk to most of my progressive friends. They're just so fearful. So I'm just curious, what do you think about our unfolding future and the so-called change of paradigms, and just where do you find ourselves, and any thoughts in the direction of how do we heal our culture right now? There's so much polarization.
Well, I thank you so much, Ken, for being here, and thank you for the question. It's really wonderful. I've been waiting for somebody to ask this question. So here's what I've been saying for about 35, maybe 40 years. I've been saying we're heading towards a great awakening. I've been saying that. And then the QAnon started using the term great awakening, so I stopped. But it is an awakening. And it is what we are in right now is a deconstruction period. We're kind of falling apart. And for those of us that love the government and think that it's valuable for communities to come together and make rules, make laws, make ways that we move forward together, it's sad. It's sad to see things falling apart. And so there is a tendency for people who are in that camp to get very terrified. And then there's another sort of group of people who are pretty disconnected from what's happening and are kind of like hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil. And they're contributing a lot to the evil. Because when we go unconscious in a time of great consciousness lifting, we're not helping. We all need to put our shoulders to the wheel to lift ourselves out of an unconscious state. And what's happening is this is the resistance to conscious awakening. What's what we're seeing, the resistance. And, it's this clash of titans, right? The resistance versus elevated consciousness. Right now, at this time on planet Earth, there are a huge number of very awakened people. And that is like a tsunami of energy that's lifted the frequency. And those of us that have worked our whole lives to become more awakened and become more attuned to higher frequencies, doing yoga or working for others, you know, in kindness and compassion, studying, having a spiritual practice. Slowly but surely, those people's consciousnesses have lifted, have changed. And yet, when they get scared, they forget sometimes all the things that they learned and slide back into sort of the primordial ooze of fear. So we have this huge fear-producing machine called media, social and or whatever. And it is producing so much fear for people constantly. It's the first thing people do in the morning. It's the last thing people do at night. Look at their phones, right? So there's this fear thing that's just wrapping around people and trying to actually control them. So it's a great evil force, which is your own unique sense of fear. And it's that fear that needs to be shaken off, set aside, and inspired with hope. So this is why I'm doing 2 free classes every month. And I'm getting ready to release one coming up that's going to be inexpensive, called The Illuminated Body. And it is basically about lifting your own spiritual frequency. So I'm doing what I can, and I have been for many, many years, because I've been feeling this coming for a long time. I knew 2020 was going to be just a shitstorm, excuse me, but I knew it was coming, you know. And a lot of us did. It wasn't just me, you know, it was a whole bunch of us knew, and we felt it. And most of us have just not known what to do. It's like we don't know what to do. So little by little, I've realized that people needed to be helped to know what to do. So here's what I would suggest that every conscious person do. Do your own work. Stay as present as you can. Watch as much news as you need to be informed, but don't go overboard. And look for bright lights. There are really bright lights out there. There's a handful of them. I mean, I can name some of them, but that would be like taking a political side, which I don't want to do. So it's important for us to find those bright lights. And when they're shining really brightly, put your money there, put your time there, put your energy there. Back up the people who are taking the risk. There's a guy who he's so big energetically that you kind of can't avoid him. His name is Graham Plattner, and he's running for Senate in Maine. He is a Democrat, and he explains why he's a Democrat, which is very articulate and sensible. But the thing about Graham Plattner is that he's huge energetically. And he has this tremendous force. So when we find somebody like that, it gives us hope, you know, especially if we're older. We're kind of looking at, you know, all our heroes were shot, you know, what happened? Martin Luther King got shot, Bobby Kennedy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They all died. And so many of the young men of my generation went off to Vietnam because there was a draft and they couldn't avoid it. You know?
I was one of those.
So we're here to say there is more. It is a great awakening that's occurring. It is time for us to step up, to live from our principles and our values, to say yes to your own truth, to say yes to your own. And I don't mean it as like, I'm going to tell you the truth no matter what you think. You know, that's not truth. That's bullshit. So when I say truth, I mean your spiritual awakened truth, your awareness. And usually that takes us to love.
Mm-hmm.
So loving the potential of what is there and cultivating youth and beautiful, beautiful beings. Barack Obama's presidential library is just opening, and his whole orientation is towards the young. It's towards helping educate. He has a huge library. He has programs for training kids and helping them to become leaders. And this is where we need to put our attention, because these young people who are coming up now need the wisdom of the elders. And it's important to step into your elderhood, you know. Now, I do know a damn thing or two, you know, and here I am to support you. So I think that's where we're going. We need to support each other. We need to support be the elders, support that which is out there. And we need to know that the cosmic frequency is lifting, that the species is changing, and that there is going to be sort of a quantum shift fairly soon.
I appreciate that. It's rather generalistic, but I appreciate that primary. And I was reminded of, from what you were saying of Martin Luther King. He said, problem is we lack a love strategy. And especially the left lacks that right now. In the studies that are showing, I'll just finish with this, because I'm a media scholar. That's a big part of what I do, is study media. For watching NPR, nice to be my favorite radio station. They have 89 people on our news staff, and no one's covering the center, the independent thought, or the right. And there's much more diversity on the right than there is on the left.
Yeah.
That's where the debate's going on, is in the center and on the right. The left is so stuck in their fears.
I would say the left, but not necessarily the progressive.
Sorry?
I say the left, but not necessarily the progressive, which is a little further to the center.
Yeah, that most of us identify right now as independents. We don't identify as left or right.
That's right. It's what, 46% or something?
Yeah, because the Trump derangement syndrome has trapped everybody on the left, and it's become a cancel culture. And I just left those youth you're talking about. They're so lost right now.
Yeah.
And they do not trust white people, pretty much. That's literally, I mean, because I'm white and also male, it's like, oh, we can't trust you. So it's so interesting how, for me, becoming a safe person, often you're defined as unsafe. So
yeah,
whole politics.
Ken, I'm going to interrupt you because I just want to say this right now, and that is, you cannot allow other people to define you, and you cannot allow other people to take your torch and throw it to the ground. You got to hold that sucker high.
The media
hold
does
that torch high.
The media does that to all of us, as you pointed.
Well, screw the media.
Well, we have to start we have to broaden our media diet. That's all I'm saying. Because right now,
it's dying, if you haven't noticed.
What's that?
I said the media is dying. It's changing. I mean, you know.
No, not everywhere. I would say where it's dying is it should be, right? You know, CNN is dying. MSN now is dying.
Yeah, well, we could go on and on about that. Yeah. But the truth of the matter is that spiritually, we need to keep the torch lit and high, because when we begin to get into the minutia of this isn't working and this isn't working and this isn't working, it's basically nothing's working, honey. Nothing's working right now. The social political system is crashing and burning.
I appreciate your keyword. That's what I'm taking away most from what you've shared is deconstruction time.
It totally is.
Yeah, we can't really see it from here, and I just like it's walking up a hill you can't see till you get up and see it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And binoculars are not going to help. You know, you just have to keep plugging. So keep climbing the hill and hold your torch high so others around you can see the way, you know? And it's a very frightening time, you know, if you allow yourself to go into a fear spiral, you can just go right down the fear spiral and right down the toilet, you know? So you got to climb out and stand on the rim and get up on top of the tank and get out of the toilet. And that's the best way to manage yourself and to be a contributor as opposed to a detractor.
And maybe practice listening too, because most of us, especially those with Trump derangement syndrome, just can't do that right now.
Mm-hmm. Stop calling it that, by the way.
Well, I've seen
The
it.
reason I'm saying that is
Yeah,
because
yeah.
every time you say those words, you give it
Yeah.
power. So don't.
I just seen so much of it that people just can't think.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that you've had such a rough time of it. It sounds like you've been kind of
Well, it's not
scraped over the coals a little.
not just me. The whole community at the university is just trashed because of this righteousness that's come out of progressive circles, so called. So it's
Yeah,
a
I hear you.
fascinating time.
I've been concerned about that. I saw some of that in my own organization. It's
Oh, yeah.
been, people being holier than thou. It's a little bit much.
Yeah.
So, I
Well,
mean,
thank you.
yeah. And just, come back again and, stay connected because there's a light here.
Okay. Okay.
We've got the light on.
Appreciate that. All
Hold
right.
the torch.
Okay.
All right. So we had a couple more questions in the chat. All right. Let's see.
Yes. So Adrian asks this first question, or our next question. Why are we connected to other realms through the spiritual layer? What's the purpose of these connections? How these realms affect our lives? For example, being connected to deity through the deity strata. What is that connection's role?
Well, that's a great question, or a series of questions there. And so, what I want to first address is what the spiritual layer is. And the spiritual layer, can you get that graphic of the spiritual layer, Cheryl? What the spiritual layer is a series of doors. It's like doorways, gateways. And the way I look at it is as docks, docks on a river. And so we have an ability to connect. I mean, this is the great magical part of the human structure, is that it's just a whole lot of ways into other realms and other ways of being and other states of consciousness. And all of that is there. At the very bottom, you see guides and guardians, but let's just first look at this river here. This is called the Spirit River, this energy that goes from lavender up into magenta. And the Spirit River runs through the entire spiritual layer. And essentially I do meditations where I teach people to get in a boat and start up the spiritual river, and you can dock at guides and guardians and open the doorway, and you can go through the doorway into conversations with ancestors, conversations with spirit guides, conversations with all kinds of incredible beings who have either incarnated to this plane or not, but usually who have incarnated on this plane. Like, for example, Kuan Yin is sitting there. Kuan Yin was a great queen in ancient days, and so she lived in a material body, and then she became a goddess over time. And so she acts as a guide or a guardian for some people. The next strata is the elemental strata. So these are, you can dock here and you can go into like the fire element, and you can begin to understand fire salamanders and water sprites and metal spirits and earth spirits and wood sprites and air zephyrs. You can begin to understand these different elements, and you can access them and use them for your gratification, for learning. It's like going to get an advanced degree to study in these different layers. And then there's the fairy folk layer, which is inhabited by sort of magical beings like fairies and trolls and elves and different creatures of the night you might think of. And fairies are nature spirits, and a lot of nature spirits live in this fairy folk realm. They're not just in guides and guardians. And then the next one is intuition, and intuition is your own like level of awareness of your own nature. Your intuitive nature is the doorway into your own spiritual awakened awareness. It's the seat of the star chakra. And it is the place where inner sight becomes really honed and kind of purified. And then we have the realm of the angels, the angelic strata. And the angelic strata is really beings who have never incarnated. So Archangel Michael, the angel choir, sacred anatomy angels, all the angels that we touch into, that we reach with our hands and our hearts, are available in this place. We can reach to them. We can dock our little boat there and get out and experience angelic truth. And then there's the deity strata. And the deity strata is every deity that you have had a relationship with through all of your incarnations. I first became aware that sort of out of work deities hung around and were waiting for us to call on them a long time ago, maybe, I don't know, in the late 90s. And I became aware that beings like Set and Isis and Solaris, who was a sun god, well, that's a Roman name of the sun god, but there was an earlier name of Solaris that was Druidic, and so these gods and goddesses have not been worshipped or cared about, or no offerings have been made to them in thousands of years, some of them, and yet they're still here. Yet they're still around us. If you've ever had the opportunity to enter an ancient temple, maybe a ruin of an Egyptian ruin, or a Teotihuacan near Mexico City that's thousands of years old, or you've had the opportunity to go someplace where a different god was worshipped. I remember when we were in Rome not too long ago, we went down into a church that had been built upon another church that had been built upon a Mithric temple. And somehow or another, they had managed to create an access down into this Mithric temple. It's St. Clementine's in Rome. And so we went down, 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 and we walked into these Mithric caves. They were like rooms with no windows and just seats around. And it was a Mithric temple. Mithras was the god. And the energy was so different than the church that was right on top of it, so completely different. It was fascinating to see the distinctions. So the deity strata is really towards that end. In other words, nothing is ever really lost. Nothing goes away forever. I mean, the guys who wrote the Constitution were pulling on things, the Magna Carta, were pulling on things from before. They were writing the Constitution for a new idea, but they used old ideas. And that's always been the case. For every human institution, we use old ideas to move forward.
Thank you. And what the deity does? Why is it so? Why the deity exists? I mean, why? What's the relationship between us and deities?
History. Your old lifetimes. 15 lifetimes ago, maybe you worshipped a different god. And the thing is that all of those deities, there's a through line. There's a through line. I talk about the divine source. And historically, you can find people who talked about the divine source hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And it's a through line, bringing forward to now what was there before. And you know, I mean, some of these gods and goddesses were, you know, they were more primitive, right? But if you look at like the American Indian corn maiden, I mean, she's a fertility goddess, a goddess of abundance and green and growth and transformation, change from nothing, a seed into something. And that, of course, is Persephone's job too, you know. So they're the same. They're the same goddess. They have different names. They have different areas of the planet that they were special to, but they're still the same. Pachamama and Hera have a lot in common. So there's gods and goddesses for centuries and millennia that our humanity has worshipped because they had the highest and best qualities of what it is that we need to learn. So the reason we have a reminder in our subtle structure is because it's good to remember who you truly are.
I see. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome, Adrian.
That
All right,
was
so
the
Ridza here.
That was the most beautiful description of why we need a spiritual practice and relationships in that way. Thank you, Desda.
You're welcome, Cheryl. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Well, and our next question is for Ridza, and he asks, when we incarnate in our body, is it possible not to do it completely and only be partially embodied? And if so, where is the other part?
Yeah, well, we don't, our parts don't like disperse, you know. If we don't embody adequately, like when a baby is ensouled, what's happening is the electromagnetic energy and the subtle energy is lining up. And that happens in the chakras. So all 13 of the major chakras and all 10 of the electromagnetic chakras, those chakras all have to line up and start working together, because the electromagnetic energy is a bridging energy, and it brings into material reality the subtle information of your soul. So if you are not fully embodied, what it means is that some of your electromagnetic chakras may not have been fully activated. And it's also possible that your embodiment didn't come all the way in. So there might be a part of you that we enter either through the head at the top, we enter through the heart at the front and the back, and we enter through the dantian, not the dantian, so sorry, the root, which is in the perineum. So we enter in these different places. And energetically, if you haven't really come all the way in, sometimes that needs to be encouraged, which is, you know, if you guys remember Roots, when we were, you know, kids, or in the 70s, they had that great show Roots, and you see Kunta Kinte being held up by his father, and that's so the spirit can come into his body, because it was understood that the spirit has to be invited in. So the first thing we do in the 5 steps to the edge is we invite the spirit in with embodied presence, because spirit, presence, and essence are essentially the same. So if you think of bringing your spirit into your body, it's your essence you're bringing into your body. It's also your presence. Because if you're not spiritually embodied, you cannot be present. So, but your parts don't go floating around anywhere. They're just waiting patiently, drumming their fingers, saying, "What's going on?" You're welcome. You're welcome, Rinsa. All right. Well, there's something I want to do before, I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to do this because of my conversation with Ken, but also because of like where we're at. Where we're at, you know. Sometimes I feel like the the crossroads are, hitting us in the face, and we're having a hard time seeing our way clear. So what I'm going to do is call on some divine guidance to help us all recover from this moment we're in. I call upon the divine source and ask the divine source to come present in this moment, to lead us back to the memory of who we authentically are, to open our channels to the four aspects of the authentic self, to see the four faces of our own awareness, turning in four different directions, but working together as one to bring the wholeness, the fullness of our own soul's purpose present in each moment of every single day. So that you and I together have an opportunity to join hands, to stand shoulder to shoulder with Source, to know that we are co-creative entities, that our business is about the creation of truth, reality, beauty, awakened awareness, and conscious embodiment. We are about that now. So as you hold the vision for your future in your mind, as you lift your torch, lit already from the fire of your own soul's purpose, and you hold that torch high, take into account the fact that the wind is blowing mightily. Protect your torch, hold it high, and know that that flame is coming from the internal power of your connection to the divine source, that there is no separation between you and the truth of all life. We are continuing in the wake of all creation, and the way that we do everything from repair the planet to repair our culture, to repair everything like media and music and art and dance and philosophy and clear thinking in psychology and medicine, the way that we imbue science with the hope of tomorrow is to know that we have the spark of creation within us, that it is a powerful light, very, very clearly shining from our hearts, from our solar plexus, from our dantian, from our pelvis, from our brains, from our throats, and from our vision of what can be. Hold, instead of the fear, hold the hope. Instead of, oh my gosh, look at, oh my goodness, and see the potential of who you can become and what the beings around you can become, and know that you are working just by holding this truth, just by holding this reality. You're not getting off the hook. You still have to move your feet, move your body, and do things that are positive, recycle, think about the good you can do, engage with your humanity around you, vote, carry those things that are necessary forward, and don't shy away from difficult conversations. But do those things from the light within you. Do those things with the torch held high. Do those things knowing that as your consciousness lifts, which it's doing right now, as it lifts, we lift all boats. The high tide lifts all boats, and we have the benefit of knowing what the high tide is. So allow yourself to be part of that. Allow yourself to know that there is a tomorrow, that we do have a future, and that things, yes, they're changing. And yes, there is an incredible resistance. But the light will not be stamped out, because there are so many of us who are holding that light high. And our hearts are bright, our minds are open, and we're able to listen, and hear that which is difficult, but remember that which is really important, which is that alignment with divinity, alignment with all that is, alignment with the conscious awakened awareness, the truth of what we are, not ignoring that which is happening, but remembering that we're standing on a mountain and we're not underneath that mountain, we're on top. So allow yourself to be there. Look out at the horizon and know that the future is secure. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was a powerful session, and I'm really grateful for every question and for every shining face that I see. Thank you, Elisa and Clara and Elizabeth and Leslie and Christina and Ken, Jensen, Diane, hi honey, Ridza, Christine, Hosanna, Fred, Tamara, Zoom user, Barbara Short, Adrian, and Cheryl. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your generosity, and thank you for your faith. Keep the faith, kids. Peace. Bye-bye. The deep dive. It starts May 29th. We've already done the free class. So it is recorded and available if you want to check out what you think the class is about. Starts Friday, May 29th. It's 9 classes, and it's a deep, deep dive into the sacred anatomy. I'm not teaching procedures, although I can't promise there won't be some. And it is extremely powerful information coming at this time. Why? To raise the conscious awakened awareness of the species. That's what we're doing. That's what we're up to. That's what we've been doing for years. And it's really for deeper understanding of the existing anatomy that I introduced in Your Sacred Anatomy, this doorstop of a book. And there's new art, new anatomy. It's been 15 years. There's a whole lot I'm bringing to it. The class is 9 modules, 3 hours each on Fridays, 9 to 12 Pacific. Everything is recorded, so if you miss something, you can go back and look at it. And the class is $800 unless you're a Legacy Library member, in which case it's $480 only until the 11th of May, and then it'll go up a little bit. So there's also a class called Ask Me Anything, which you just attended. The next one is on June 12th. Come on and ask me anything. I'm game. I'm ready to hear it. Then we've got Sangha Garden just 2 days later on June 14th. And the topic, finding yourself in these trying times. I'm going to try to talk as much as I can get into a half an hour about alignment with your own soul, like really getting in alignment. And then I also want to introduce the Sacred Anatomy Secret, which is coming May 27th at 10 a.m. and May 30th at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. So one's in the West Coast, one's on the East Coast, taught by 2 of our wonderful teachers, taught by Cheryl Berry, who was on our call today, and Tasha Weber, who is often on our call. And it's a free introduction, this class, into the powerful energy boundary of the edge. And then there's the Edge Express class, which is coming up right after that. 5 spiritual steps to change your life. 1, be more present in your life and activate your cells. 2, ground safely into your own sacred anatomy. 3, contain your energy and stop merging with everybody. 4, find that sacred place where you can find the most compassionate and healthy stance for living at the edge of your subtle anatomy. And 5, tame your monkey mind for greater calm. Everybody needs this class. I've never met somebody who didn't need this class. Every single person needs this class. So I urge you all to take it if you haven't, and take it from these great teachers who we're launching some wonderful new teachers. That's great to see. So you can find all of that on our website, www.yoursacredanatomy.com. Hope to see you next time, and thanks a lot for coming. Blessings, love.